Hello, fellow Yu-Gi-Oh fans! The King is back with another Master Duel deck build and strategy guide video. This time featuring the adorable woodland critters, the elusive denizens of the closed forest, Melffys. As with my previous video, which to my surprise has gotten over 4,000 views and counting, I'll be detailing the monster spells and traps that I use in my build and the strategies I've learned. Also, like the last guide, I'll split the cards into essential and support categories for monsters, spells, and traps. I'd also like to take a second to announce that my channel has finally reached over 500 subscribers. Thank you guys, you're the best. Unlike most of my other decks, this one in particular doesn't just utilize a single archetype, meaning it isn't technically a pure build, or rather it's not a pure Melffy build. Due to the Melffy's own effects being what they are, they serve as the deck's main engine, but still contribute to most of the deck's strategies. And unlike certain other players who use Melffys, and you know who you are, my build is pure beast. The Melffys themselves are primarily a Exceed deck that heavily incorporates level 2 beast monsters. Unfortunately, there aren't enough monsters in the archetype to fill up the main or extra deck, but that allows for some exciting plays. Since the main deck Melffys are all level 2 and support other level 2 beast monsters, not just themselves, stacking the deck with different level 2 beasts that can take full advantage of the Melffy's effects, and vice versa, is the first step to victory. It's also a good idea to add level 2 beasts that can help bring out the extra deck monsters faster than the Melffys can on their own. Now that the formalities are done, let's go trekking and see if we can find our elusive little beasties. Now the archetype contains 7 main deck Melffys, 5 of which share the same effects with slight variations unique to each. One being they can special summon themselves from the hand during your end phase. The other is that they can return to the hand at the first sign of danger, i.e. when they're targeted for attacks or when an opponent summons a monster. There are also 4 extra deck Melffys, 3 being Exceed monsters, and the other being the relatively new Synchro monster. Interestingly, 3 of the 4 aren't individual monsters. Instead, there's several Melffys all gathered together, including the original 7. There's a raccoon, a llama, a polar bear, a panda bear, an otter, penguins, and what could possibly be a dormouse or a wood rat. Why Konami didn't bother making them into monsters for the deck is beyond me, but I suppose there's still hope, right? Also of note is that 6 of the 7 main deck Melffys have attack and defense points that add up to 400. Keep this in mind, it'll be relevant later. To start off, we have the bulky Melffy, Melffy Rabby. I say that because it has a surprising 2100 defense points, unlike the others. To my surprise, people have repeatedly asked why I bother including it in the deck, claiming it's useless. Probably because it's a vanilla monster. I'll explain the reason later, but keep it at 3 for now. Next is the playful Melffy, Melffy Puppy. When he's returned to the hand by his effect, he can fetch another level 2 or lower beast monster from the deck to take his place. He's one of the most essential Melffys, so keep him at 3. After him, we have one of the newest Melffys, the maternal Melffy, Melffy Wally. When she's returned to the hand by her effect, you can special summon 2 other Melffy monsters from your deck in her place. Be sure to keep her at 3. Moving on, we have the lazy Melffy, Melffy Caddy. Her effect lets her return to the hand and bring any beast monster from the deck back with her. There's a lot of potential for that, so keep her at 3. The next one is the sly Melffy, Melffy Fenny. His effect allows him to swap himself out with any other beast monster in your hand. Keep him at 3. Following Fenny is the loyal Melffy, Melffy Pony. His effect lets him return to the hand and bring the fellow level 2 or lower beast monster back with him from the graveyard. As with the others, keep him at 3. The extra deck is next, and as a consequence of all but 4 of the monsters in the main deck being level 2, Most of the extra deck monsters will be ranked 2, except for their Synchro and a Link. Starting off, we have Melffy of the Forest. Their first effect lets you detach an overlay unit to add a Melffy card from the deck to your hand. Their second effect activates when another of your Melffy monsters returns to your hand. You can target a monster your opponent controls and permanently negate its effect for as long as it remains face up on the field. It also can't attack. The next monster is Joyous Melffys, which shows the Melffys partaking in a lovely afternoon feast. Their first effect lets you detach an overlay unit to allow all your Melffy monsters to attack directly that turn. Their second effect lets you target a Beast Exceed monster you control and return it to the extra deck. Then you can special summon level 2 Beast monsters from your graveyard up to the number of overlay units that monster had. Keep it at 3. After them, we have the leader of the Melffys and the arguable deck master, Melffy Mommy. She has 4 effects, but 3 of them can only be used if she has the correct number of overlay units. Her first effect is a quick effect that allows her to attach a beast monster that you control or one in your hand onto herself as an overlay unit. She becomes immune to battle destruction if she has 3 or more overlay units. You take no battle damage from her if she battles with 4 or more overlay units. And if she has 5 or more, you can inflict damage equal to an attack position monster's attack points if an attack is declared between her and said attack position monster. Keep her at 3. That's all for the essential Melffy monsters, but we're not entirely done, as we've yet to discuss the essential non-Melffy monsters. First, my personal favorite, Kalantosa, Mystical Beast of the Forest. When it's special summoned by the effect of another beast monster, you can target 1 card on the field and destroy it. Definitely keep it at 3. And finally, we have Nimble Mamanga. It gives you an extra 1000 life points if it's destroyed by battle. You can then special summon up to 2 more copies from your deck face down. I shouldn't have to say this for obvious reasons, but I will keep it at 3. And with that, we can get started with the essential spells. The most crucial spell in the deck is the continuous spell, Melffy Hide and Seek. Its first effect makes it so that your beast monsters won't be destroyed by card effects once each turn. Its second effect allows you to target 3 beast monsters in your graveyard and shuffle them back into the deck before letting you draw 1 card. Keep it at 3. The second most crucial spell in the deck is Obedience Schooled. Its effect lets you special summon 3 level 2 or lower beast monsters from your deck with their effects negated, but only if you don't control any monsters. Additionally, the summoned monsters will be destroyed during the end phase. Keep it at 3. Now that we're done with the essentials, we can move on to the monsters that support the Melffys and vice versa. However, we're not entirely done discussing the Melffy monsters just yet. The first one we'll go over is another addition to the main 7, the aquatic Melffy, Melffy Penny. It's the archetype's only tuner monster. His primary effect lets you special summon him from your hand and then use him and other Melffys in your hand to synchro summon a monster, but only if a beast monster has been returned to the hand that turn. His second effect activates in the graveyard, allowing you to attach him to an Exceed beast monster on your field during your end phase. Speaking of tuners and synchros, we have the final group of Melffys and the archetype's only synchro, Merry Melffys. When they're special summoned, you can immediately target a face-up monster on the field and return it to the hand. Similar to Puffy and Wally, their second effect lets them return to the extra deck when your opponent summons a monster or targets it for an attack, before letting you special summon a Melffy Exceed monster from the extra deck in their place. Now that we're done with the Melffy monsters, we can return to the other, less elusive beasts in the forest. Since we're dealing with support monsters, I figured the best beast to start with would be the members of the Rescue Squad. Those are Rescue Cat, Rescue Rabbit, and their newest recruit, Rescue Hedgehog. By sending Cat to the graveyard, you can bring out 2 level 3 or lower monsters from your deck with their effects negated. However, they'll be destroyed during the end phase. With Rescue Rabbit, you can banish him from your field and special summon 2 copies of a level 4 lower normal monster from your deck, but they'll be destroyed during the end phase. Since the only monster in the deck that fits that criterion is Rabby, well, they may be dumb bunnies, but they are good at multiplying. Anyway, we finally get to Rescue Hedgehog. Similar to his senior, he can be banished to special summon 2 level 3 or lower monsters from the deck, but they have to be of the same type, attribute, and level. One must also be a normal monster, and the other must be an effect monster. And their effects will be negated, and they'll be destroyed during the end phase. It almost makes me wonder if the title Rescue is just for show. Baby Raccoon Tauntaun is next. He's a flip monster whose effect is to special summon a different level 2 beast monster from the deck. Not very interesting compared to the others, but give him a chance. This monster is a recent addition to the deck. It's a level 2 beast and a friend of Kalantosa, Kitty Tail Mystical Beast of the Forest. Its first effect lets you target any beast monster in your graveyard and send a monster with the same level from the deck to the graveyard when you summon it. Its second effect can be activated after your opponent destroys it. You can add 1 other beast monster from your deck to your hand. Next, we have the now limited and one of the only 3 non-Earth attribute monsters in the deck, Nimble Beaver. When he's normal summoned, you can special summon another level 3 or lower Nimble monster from the deck. He's one of the reasons we have several Nimble Momongas. One of the final non-extra deck monsters on this list is the almighty Alpha, the Master of Beasts. Since normal summoning him isn't an option, the only way to use him is to special summon him first, which you can only do if your opponent's monster's combined attack points are greater than your own. His effect lets you target any number of your beast monsters that you control, himself included, return them to the hand, and then do the same to your opponent's monsters. Think of it as a mighty roar that clears the field. Unfortunately, that same roar renders him unable to attack directly for that turn. Going back to the extra deck, we have 2 non-Melffys. The first is the rank 2 number 64, Ronin Raccoon Sendai Yu. When you detach an overlay unit from him, you can special summon a token whose attack points become equal to the monster on the field with the highest attack points. He also can be destroyed by battle or card effects so long as you control another beast-type monster. The next monster on the list is none other than the generic Earthlink, Mrs. Radiant. It bestows 500 extra attack and defense points to all Earth monsters, and weakens wind monsters by decreasing their attack and defense points by 400. And when it's destroyed and sent to the graveyard, you can target and add 1 Earth monster from your graveyard to your hand. I also recently tried adding another beast monster to the deck, that being Alpha's superior cousin, Behemoth the King of 100 Battles. He can be tribute summoned by tributing 1 monster, which is easier to do in a swarming deck like this one. Being normal summoned also renders him unaffected by the activated effects of special summon monsters. When you summon him, you can target 1 beast monster in your graveyard and add it to your hand, but it causes Behemoth to lose 700 attack points. However, you can make him regain those 700 attack points during your end phase. Now that the monster list is finally finished, all that's left is the remaining spells and traps. As is appropriate, we'll get the remaining Melffy spells and traps out of the way first. Starting off, we have the Archetypes Monster Reborn, the quick play spell Melffy Tag. It revives a single Melffy from the graveyard. That's it. After Tag is Staring Contest. It has 2 effects. You can reveal any beast monster in your hand and add a Melffy with a different name from the deck or graveyard to your hand before placing the monster you revealed at the bottom of your deck. The second effect, which the card art references, lets you reveal any number of Melffys in your hand at the start of the battle phase. Since your opponent's monsters will be mesmerized by their cuteness, they'll lose attack points equal to the combined attack and defense of the revealed Melffys in your hand. Finally, there's the Archetypes Only Trap card, Melffy Playhouse. Why am I just now noticing that their cards are based on children's games? Its effect lets you remove any number of overlay units from your Beast-type Exceed monsters, target the same amount of cards your opponent controls, and return them to the hand. Your Exceed Beast will also gain 500 attack points for each attached overlay unit. Now that we're done playing house, we can move on to the remaining support cards. Since the Melffys need a home to defend, we'll top the list with the field spell Closed Forest. This card gives all of your beast monsters an extra 100 attack points for each monster you have in your graveyard. It also prevents other field spells from being activated, even the turn it's destroyed. Next is a card used in the GX anime, Ayre's Rock Sunrise. Another monster reborn for the deck, it lets you revive a beast monster from the graveyard and then make your opponent's monsters lose 200 attack points for every beast monster in the graveyard until the end of the turn. The remaining cards don't need to be explained, so I'll just show them here before we get to the fun part, the strategy guide. Now, the Melffys are a relatively weak deck that rely on swarming and disruption for most, if not all, of their main strategies. And since their primary gimmick is fleeing from danger and letting another beast deal with the problem in their place, keeping them in your hand is essential. That's why, as I'm sure many of you have been wondering, I don't bother having any other generic and high-level synchro monsters in the extra deck. Well, that and the only other synchro beast that I know wouldn't be of much use most of the time anyway. Also, like my Ghost Trick deck, this one is also 60 cards because it also thins itself out. However, unlike my Ghost Tricks, the strategies for the Melffys aren't as complicated and are more straightforward. However, some of them still require a bit of planning and foresight to properly pull off. There are also several different paths you can take for one outcome, meaning you can keep your opponent guessing and maintain your advantage if you're clever enough. To give you a taste, I'll start with my favorite tactic. As Kalantosa is only useful if he's special summoned by another beast monster, the first step to effectively using him is getting him onto the field as soon as possible. Since he can destroy cards on the field and be used multiple times in a single turn, knowing when to use his effect is critical. And since this is a beast exclusive deck with several monsters that have special summoning effects, there are several ways to do so. For example, both Puppy and Fenny can special summon Kalantosa directly from the deck and the hand respectively. Caddy can add him from the deck to the hand, and Pony can retrieve him from the graveyard. So you can combo both with Fenny to get Kalantosa out too. You can also use Behemoth to get Kalantosa from the graveyard as well. Joyous Melffy's effect is also an excellent way to summon Kalantosa during your opponent's turn, and since Joyous can be summoned using multiple monsters as overlay units, it's possible to summon all 3 copies of Kalantosa if they're all in the graveyard. This will be the most effective tactic. However, as I've said, you need to plan accordingly when attempting such a move, as the deck's own swarming tactic can be a double-edged sword if you aren't careful. Since you'll need a few of your main monster zones empty to use Joyous effect efficiently, I recommend reserving your extra monster zone for the Melffys who can remove themselves from the field. Moving on, I'll go over how to effectively set up the ideal Melffy board, but don't worry, I'm not done with Kalantosa yet. As I'm sure you all know, almost every deck you come across tends to house hand traps, and unfortunately, having your monsters ashed or impermed at the worst possible time can be challenging to recover from. That's why cards like Double Summon and Obedience School are helpful in this deck. Not just because they can get more monsters on the field for Exceed summoning, but because spell cards like the latter can be used to bait out Ash Blossom, allowing you to keep your turn going. When starting your turn, preferably when going first, your ideal cards would be Nimble Beaver, Wally, Puppy, a Rescue, and Obedience School. If your opponent has no hand traps to stop it, you can use Beaver to summon Momonga and both monsters to summon Melffy of the Forest. Forest should always be the first Melffy Exceed you summon because it'll allow you to add the Melffy card you need the most to your hand. If you don't already have it in your hand or on your field, Hide and Seek is the card that you should add. Wally is the second best choice, but that's only if you don't know what your opponent might use against you. You'll also want at least one of the main Melffys on your field with Forest before your turn ends. If you can get Forest out on your first turn but end up with a field of Melffys like Wally and any of the other 4, you should be fine since Wally can set the stage for getting your extra deck monsters out. Obedience School can potentially get 2 extra deck monsters out on your first turn, or just 1 if you don't have another beast monster to normal summon. Also, choosing which monsters you'll summon with it will play a significant role in how the duel goes. Kalantosa is a must, as is at least one Melffy monster like Caddy, Puppy, or Wally. I'd also recommend one of the less essential beasts in the deck, like Tauntaun, but only because using a more crucial card as an overlay unit on the first turn carries significant risks. The rescues are also an excellent complement to the spell, providing even more overlay units for your Exceed monsters. Speaking of, I want to go over how the strategies for each extra deck monster works. More specifically, their ability to disrupt the opponent. As I've said earlier, the Melffys are relatively weak, meaning they can't rely on brute force to overwhelm their opponents. Well, most of the time. Instead, they compensate for their lack of attack power by stopping their enemies before they can do damage. The best example is the previously mentioned Melffy of the Forest. As the weakest and sturdiest of the extra deck Melffys, Forest's primary role is to render your opponent's monsters useless before they can start their combos. Fittingly, given their gimmick, you need at least one of the main deck Melffys in order to do so. Additionally, the more of them you have on the field, the more opportunities you'll have to use Forest's effect with more precision. Wally and Puppy are the better options because they can start several chains during your opponent's turn. Also, as I've mentioned, summoning Kalantosa is pivotal, especially if your opponent has, say, a tuna or a continuous spell or trap card that can make your life difficult. In addition to being able to special summon several copies of Kalantosa, Joyous Melffys can also be useful in getting the Melffys in the graveyard, preferably the ones you haven't used that turn, onto the field to aid in Forest's effect. With Merry Melffys, you'll have many more opportunities to disrupt your opponent. However, it's better not to use them until later in the duel since they'll allow you to disrupt your opponents better. But more on that later. The next disruption strategy involves a massive moral dilemma for all but the cruelest of duelists, that being the Melffy staring contest. Because who could possibly bring themselves to hurt such adorable creatures when they're looking right into your soul? For those who have asked why I bother including Melffy Rabby in my build, this is the primary reason. Due to staring contests weakening your opponent's monsters based on the Melffys you choose to reveal, and 86% of them only being able to decrease attack points by 400 each, a single copy of Rabby can cut your opponent's monster's power down by almost half, since it has a whopping 2100 defense points. And if you have two, you can end the battle phase before it starts. However, this strategy holds some risk due to the deck's lack of back row protection, but that's why you have to be careful when you decide to use it. The final disruption tactic I'll go over before moving on is more of a last resort, but it can still save you in a pinch, that being Melffy Playhouse's effect. To make full use of it, you'll need XC Beast monsters with a lot of overlay units. The monsters you can use to do that are Joyous Melffys and Melffy Mommy. I call it a last resort because using it risks leaving you unable to take advantage of your best strategies. High risk, high reward. Melffy Mommy's effect to give herself more overlay unit is a great way to help mitigate the cost since you can use her abundance of them to let Forest and Joyous keep theirs. Penny's graveyard effect is also good to remember if you plan on using this strategy. Now that I've gone over the disruption strategies, I'll demonstrate how the Melffy swarming capabilities play a key role in said disruptions. We'll start with something simple since Melffys usually go wild once they sense danger. As seen here with one of my earlier builds, it's even possible to win the duel without going into the extra deck. All you need is the right combination of Melffys and Beasts. As you can see, I have multiple ways to eliminate the highly problematic Ancient Gear that my opponent controls. Not only by using Kalantosa to destroy it, but with Penny in my hand, I could have easily summoned Merry Melffys to get rid of it instead. However, destroying the cards and showing how easily you can do so rather than returning them to the hand, or extra deck in this case, is much more likely to intimidate the opponent. I also had a backup plan to use staring contests to mitigate the damage if my initial plan failed. which is why I use Caddy to add Rabby to my hand. Returning to the extra deck, Melffy of the Forest is the monster that most benefits from these swarming tactics. You can only use their disabling effect once per turn, so you must be precise in its use. Having a big number of Melffys alongside Forest provides more chances to disrupt. It also allows for further disruptions, which can potentially cause a chain reaction that your opponent won't be able to keep up with. Shown here with Gene Raiders, and shown here with Horus. I even get to show off Melffy Playhouse too. Did you see that? Both with and without Forest, the Melffy swarming managed to turn several seemingly impossible scenarios around in their favor. And I'm sure you've noticed, but Mary's ability to summon Forest in a pinch was the clincher against that Gene Raider deck, as was summoning Mommy and using her effect in conjunction with Playhouse against Horus. Summoning Sandayu at the end was mostly just me trolling, but I didn't want to take any chances to give my opponent time to recover. Now we move on to the final list of strategies for the deck, taking advantage of their offensive prowess, which I already kinda touched upon. I know this may sound contradictory given that I previously called them weak, but the Melffys are more than capable of dealing significant damage, either on their own or with the extra help. Joyous Melffys is the most prominent example, since they allow themselves and the other Melffys to attack directly. However, there are still a few ways to rack up the damage, and these are what I did before I got the Melffys. Mrs. Radiant helps by increasing your monster's attack points. Combined with Closed Forest attack boost and the attack draining effects of Ayers Rock Sunrise, you can close the power gap depending on how full your graveyard is. But there's still one additional monster that'll take full advantage of all those effects, and that's Ronin Raccoon Sandayu, or rather the token it creates. But if you're going for maximum efficiency with these, I'd recommend using Sunrise after summoning the token, especially if your opponent's monster has the most attack points. For a more straightforward way of dealing damage, all you'll need is a monster on your opponent's side of the field with a large number of attack points, and Melffy Mommy with at least 5 overlay units. But you can do even more damage if you have Joyous and Mary combined with the field spell. Imagine using that against an overpowered Psychic End Punisher. And that concludes the strategy portion of the video. If you guys find something you think I might have missed, be sure to let me know in the comments. All that's left now is the final portion, which is the deck's final stats. As I did with my previous video, I'll be assigning ranks for the 3 stats I believe to be the most essential for all decks. That being its overall power, its adaptability, and its ability to recover. 1 card being the lowest and 5 cards being the highest. For their power rating, I'm giving them the below average score of 2 cards. This is due to the low attack points of the main deck monsters and average attack points of the extra deck monsters. For adaptability, I'm giving them an above average 4 cards, on account of their various effects allowing them to disrupt the opponent and give them various openings to exploit. Last but not least, we have recovery. Determining the rating for this one was tricky, but I decided to settle on 4 cards as well. The reason is that the main deck Melffys keep themselves in the hand specifically so they can summon themselves and swarm the field quickly. However, their reliance on the opponent's moves makes them predictable and easier to counter if you're not careful, which is why it's not a perfect score of 5. And that's all for my Melffy deck build and strategy guide. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe for more Yu-Gi-Oh! And gaming content. And if you think you found a combo here that I haven't gone over, be sure to share it in the comments. And with that, I'll take my leave. I'm off to go hunting. Bye!